The courtroom was quiet, thick with tension, the type of quiet that makes your chest constrict, until the gavel of the judge came crashing down like thunder, vibrating the entire room. Robyn Brown sat at the table, shaking, her face smeared with tears that would not abate. She wasn't the poised, serene woman fans had grown accustomed to for years on Sister Wives. She was shattered, raw, and on the brink of collapse. Opposite her, Kody Brown sat back in his chair, his arms folded tightly across his chest, as if the burdens of the world were crushing it, his face caught between fury and cold anger. And next to him, seated with head lifted high, eyes flashing with defiance, was the woman who had turned the Brown dynasty on its head, the enigmatic fifth wife. It was clear to every person in the room that this was not merely a battle in law. This was the last act of a disintegrating dynasty, a family constructed on vows of love and harmony, but now dissolving in deceit, greed, and betrayal. Fans who had been following the Browns for over a decade knew they had seen drama in the past, but nothing was like this moment. Nothing was like the sight of Robyn breaking down in front of the world, while the man who had promised to her just that last wife sat inches from her, prepared to deny it all. The affair started months prior, when rumors of Kody's hidden romance were beginning to circulate among the family. No one initially believed it. Hadn't Robyn always been the object of Kody's affection? Wasn't she the favorite among all, the woman he married legally after divorcing Mary, the wife he had declared would be his in the future? But little by little, evidence began to accumulate. Hotel bills in towns where Kody shouldn't have been, shots of him with a younger woman, rumors from neighbors about a house he had bought under a secret account. Robyn had stood by him at first. She kept saying it wasn't true, that the man she had loved with all her heart would never cheat her. But deep inside, she knew the truth was gnawing at her heart. And when she finally found the bank statements, more than $200,000 slipped quietly into hidden accounts connected directly to Kody and the new bride, her world collapsed. She was no longer his shielded spouse. She was simply another cast-off wife in a long series of shattered promises. When she sued, the family was shocked. Mary and Janelle, although far apart for so long, sat back of her in the courtroom with tight jaws and crossed arms. Christine, remarried and as far from the tumult as she could get, appeared only as a spectator, her face a combination of sadness and vindication. Even some of the older children attended, caught between loyalty to their father and the pain of witnessing their mother figures embarrassed in public. The courtroom was something more than a legal backdrop. It was the backdrop for the downfall of a dynasty. As soon as Robyn got on the stand, the dam burst. Her voice shook as she gazed at Kody, her tears flowing more rapidly with every sentence. "You promised me I was the last," she sobbed, her voice bouncing off the wooden walls. "You promised me we were doing this for the children, for our family. I gave up everything to believe in you." The judge leaned forward, observing intently, as the room remained stuck in shock. Robyn's testimony was raw and horrifying to observe. She testified to the sacrifices that she made, how she protected Kody from the other wives when they accused her of being his pet, how she bore the weight of maintaining his image, while the family was already disintegrating. But then appeared the proof. Those incriminating bank statements. With trembling hands, she presented them, every page detailing huge transfers into accounts, with no relation to the family, but every relation to Kody's new life. The courtroom gasped. Even Mary and Janelle, who'd experienced betrayal at the hands of Kody already, looked at each other in shock. The fifth wife, Maureen, sat impassive, her lips clamped together tightly, waiting her turn. And when Kody pounded his fist on the table, screaming, "This is lies, all of it," the judge was forced to call for order. But everyone could see the rage on his face, the panic creeping through the cracks of his bravado. Then was the moment that rattled the entire courtroom. Robyn completely lost it, crying hysterically, her voice barely coherent as she wailed, "You destroyed everything, Kody. You destroyed this family." Her tears filled the room, and for the first time in years, Mary stood up and put her hand on Robyn's shoulder. Janelle nodded in her seat. For a fleeting moment, past wounds closed over in the presence of common betrayal. And the biggest shock of all was reserved for when the fifth wife testified. Unlike Robyn, she cried not at all, wavered not once. She stood before the judge and boldly said, "I didn't steal Kody. He approached me. He said he was finished with the drama, finished with all the fighting, and ready to begin anew." Her words cut Robyn like a knife, each sentence another stab, another reminder that the man she believed belonged to her alone had already replaced her. The fifth wife claimed the house, claimed the gifts, but said they were Kody's own money. She also pretended to be a victim, claiming she had no knowledge of the family funds. The courtroom rang out in murmurs, some of Kody's eldest children angrily visibly, one even walking out of the room. The rift between them had never been greater. And sitting in the midst of it all, Kody had his jaw clenched, his kingdom of control slipping further and further from his grasp. At last, the judge stood up. The silence was suffocating. His words would decide, not just money, not just assets, but the entire legacy of the Brown family. He looked directly at Kody, his voice steady and clear. "You've built a life on promises, Mr. Brown, but you've broken every one of them. The evidence is undeniable. This court grants Robyn Brown and the Brown family control of all remaining family assets. The accounts under your clandestine relationship are frozen effective immediately, and your alleged marriage will not be enforced by this court on grounds of fraud, concealed funds." The gavel came down, resonating like a last gasp. Robyn broke into tears once more. But these were not just tears of sadness. These were tears of relief. Mary and Janelle moved in, supporting her as she wept. Christine, lurking silently in the background, shook her head as if she had always suspected this day was coming. The fifth wife of Kody, turning away from him, her defiance giving way to regret, when she realized that the man who would be her new beginning had only brought her into ruin. And Kody, he sat motionless, his complexion ashen, his world coming crashing down. The man who had been the face of polygamy on national TV now resembled a shadow of himself, his authority lost, his family standing against him, his future destroyed. That decision didn't merely close a court case. It closed the fantasy that had sustained the Brown family for over a decade. Fans, family members, and even Kody himself were forced to confront the reality. The sister wives' empire was based on shaky foundation, and with one swing of the gavel, it finally came tumbling down. And as Robyn departed the courtroom, surrounded by the very women with whom she had previously fought, one thing was certain: no matter how compelling the tale, no matter how compelling the deception, lies and betrayal always bring even the best families down into the light. Because ultimately the truth prevails. The courtroom was suffocatingly silent, the sort of silence that is palpable, heavy, lying on every chest within the room. The atmosphere was motionless, but it was charged with electricity, as if the sky before a storm. Creaking wooden benches groaned under the weight of bent bodies, leaning forward, eager not to miss a single word that was about to happen. Each and every eye was glued on the front, where Brown family drama, the one America had been watching for more than a decade, was no longer the show's storyline, but a hard, cold legal fight. And then it arrived, the noise that broke the silence. The judge's gavel crashed upon the block, one snap of wood on wood that rang like a gunshot. Heads snapped up, breaths caught, and for a moment it seemed as though time had slowed. That was not merely a command to order. It was a pronouncement. The truth was finally going to be brought to the light. Robyn Brown sat at the plaintiff's table, her body shaking so violently that she seemed likely to fall over. Her carefully maintained composure, the measured tone of voice, the ingratiating smiles was lost. Instead, she was a woman whose world had been turned inside out. Her cheeks were smeared with tears that had fallen long before the judge had even arrived. Her fingers gripped a pile of papers tightly enough that the edges had curved, her knuckles white and trembling. She attempted to dry her face on the back of her hand, but tears continued to fall, uncontrollable, betraying every shred of hurt she had been repressing. Facing her was Kody Brown, the man she had once thought was her forever, the man she had defended for all those years when everyone else questioned him. He leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed, his jaw set tight, his eyes shifting between the judge and the woman he once referred to as his last wife. He appeared tense, angry even but adamant about looking like he was in control. But underneath that tough shell was something else. A flash of tension, the sort of gaze a man wears when the walls he constructed around himself are starting to splinter. By his side was seated the wife, who had made whispers into scandal, rumor into evidence. The fifth, she sat erect, head held high, face inscrutable, her lips tightened into a thin line, her hands resting neatly in her lap, as if she was utterly unscathed by the pandemonium erupting around her. Her presence alone was enough to create shockwaves in the room. For years she had been the specter in the tale, the rumored mistress, the gossip mongers argued about on the internet. But here she was now, flesh and blood, sitting proudly in the courtroom, no longer a specter but the spark that had fueled this whole fire. The crowd was a sea of mixed faces. There were reporters with notebooks at the ready, hungry for a headline. There were family. Mary and Janelle sat ramrod straight behind Robyn, their eyes slitted but not at her, at him. Their faces said it all. They had seen this side of Kody before. The lies, the betrayal, the control. Christine was there too, not at the front, but in the back row, her arms folded, lips pressed together in a way that suggested she wasn't surprised at all. And then there were the children, grown by now, spread throughout the courtroom, some seated with their mothers, others near their father, though even they appeared conflicted. The room was bigger than a court of law. It was a battlefield of loyalty, loss, and broken trust. The judge pushed his glasses back onto his nose and addressed the courtroom in a stern voice that commanded the room. This court is in session. We are here to hear the allegations made against Mr. Kody Brown. I expect order. Emotions will not govern these proceedings. Facts will. Robyn's head fell with his words, her tears spilling onto the papers in her hand. She muttered something under her breath, almost silent, but the microphone picked it up. I can't believe he did this. The words hung there, weak yet sharp as glass. People at the back squirmed. Some gasped softly, others just looked at her, observing a woman disintegrate before their eyes. Kody's head swiveled towards her, his features bunching into a glare. His mouth worked soundlessly, but those who knew him could see the words. Stop now. But Robyn did not stop. She couldn't. Her lawyer put a reassuring hand on her shoulder, speaking softly in her ear, but she shook it off and pushed herself upright, with newfound almost compelling determination. Her voice cracked as she spoke, but it rang with enough authority to cut through the stillness. For years, I listened to him. I listened to everything he said. I listened and thought I was the last wife, the one who was most important, the one that he would do right by. It was all a lie. The room rumbled again, a surge of whispers. The judge held up his hand for quiet, but the tension was already turning. Kody thumped his hand on the table, the sound violent and harsh. That is not true. He was shouting, his face flush with anger. This is an ambush, a circus. She knows what she's doing. Order, the judge shouted, banging the gavel again. The room subsided into strained silence once more. But the damage had been done. The fragile veneer of control Kody had attempted to maintain had broken. Robyn's tears became sobbing, her voice breaking, trembling as she wailed. You vowed to me, Kody. You swore to me in front of our kids, in front of God, that I was the last. You ruined everything. You ruined this family. Her words echoed through the chamber. And for the first time, even Mary's eyes softened as she looked at her. Janelle shifted uncomfortably, her hand reaching for a tissue, as though Robyn's tears had unlocked something deep within her too. The family, once divided by jealousy and rivalry, seemed to unite for a moment in shared heartbreak. The fifth wife didn't blink. Her gaze was steady, her mouth curving almost imperceptibly, a glimmer of defiance in her silence. She was more stoic than victim, biding her time, sure that her own account would blaze as brightly as Robyn's meltdown. The judge's face remained stern, but even he couldn't mask the weight of the moment. He leaned forward, his tone steady but firm. This courtroom is not a stage for outbursts. But Mrs. Brown, Your testimony will be heard. This court will hear everything. Today is not about promises. It is about proof. The room exhaled as though everyone had been holding their breath. Robyn, shaking like a leaf, nodded, her papers clutched tightly in her hand, tears falling on them like ink on paper. Across the aisle, Kody sat back, fists clenched, jaw set so hard the muscles worked. And the fifth wife, she shifted, her hand lying lightly on Kody's arm, as if staking her claim at his side. The motion was minimal, but its impact boomed louder than any gavel. Everyone in that room knew one thing. This wasn't merely a trial over money. It wasn't merely about houses or bank accounts. It was over betrayal, loyalty, and the destruction of a family that once vowed to be one. And with Robyn's breakdown raging at the forefront, the narrative was no longer a matter of who Kody loved best. It was about who would make it out of the devastation. It didn't occur overnight. As with all great falls, the scandal started quietly, behind the scenes, in hushed tones and keyboard into late-night emails that were never meant to be read. The Brown family had been coming apart for years. But no one, not even Robyn, hoped the coming apart would be caused by a betrayal so profound it would put them in a courtroom. A fan said they spotted Kody dining with a woman no one knew in a small town near Flagstaff. Another said he had been seen checking into a hotel using an alias. It was spread like gossip, passed through websites, whispered among societies where the Browns were well known. Robyn waved it off at first. She reassured herself it was only people attempting to ruin what was left of her family. She had years of defending him, waving away allegations, bearing the burden of being referred to as his favorite, when all she desired was a moment's peace. Surely this must be more of the same. But the whispers did not subside. When one of the kids presented her with a photograph, grainy, taken on a phone from across a diner, her gut fell out. The picture wasn't clearly defined, but there was no question about the man with the blonde ponytail. The way he leaned in, his hand waving in that only Kody way, when he thought he was winning someone over. And to his left sat a woman, laughing, smiling, leaning in close. Not Robyn, not Mary, not Janelle, not Christine. Somebody else. She stood over him that evening, shaking her hands as she thrust the picture in his direction. What is this? Kody, who is she? Kody hardly glanced at it, before swatting it away, with a laugh that did not touch his eyes. Fans will do anything to split us up. Robyn, you know that. You can't believe everything you read on the internet. But doubt had already taken root. And then there were the receipts. A hotel charge slipped under their united papers, one that she wasn't supposed to see. The name wasn't his, but the credit card number was one she knew by heart. She sat there for hours, her brain spinning, talking herself into believing there had to be some reason. Perhaps it was business. Perhaps he rented it for a friend. But then the dates. Days she was told he spent with family. Days she was at home waiting for him. Her world started to spin. But she remained quiet, hoping that she was mistaken. Hoped that if she pretended not to hear it, the reality would fade away to nothing. But then she listened to a phone conversation. His low, intimate voice. The way he used to talk with her years before when everything was new. She could not make out the words. But she heard it. The laughter. The tone in which he said, "I'll see you soon." Her chest constricted. Her throat clamping down on a scream that never escaped. She waited for him to close the door behind him. Then reached for the phone he'd left. Careless on the counter. The messages sat there. Threads of words stretching across months. Promises, whispery confessions at midnight. Even a photo of the same woman from the restaurant. And in one the words that destroyed her. "I'm done with them. You're the only one I want now." Robyn's knees buckled. She sank to the floor, the phone escaping her fingers. Her weeping garbled against the tile of the kitchen. The children discovered her thus. Shattered, trembling, incapable of articulating why their mother had collapsed into a heap of tears. But she knew something. She couldn't hide his secrets anymore. When she confronted him once more, he did not deny it. Instead, his expression hardened. His tone crisp. "I have a right to live my life the way I choose. I've done everything for this family. And this is all I receive in return."
Complaints, disrespect, and betrayal. She gets me in a way you never have. The words cut her open. She had believed for years that she was special. The one he loved. And now, in one sentence, he threw her aside as if she was just another chapter in his book. But it was more than his love. He had betrayed. It was money. The more she investigated, the more she found that the betrayal was much deeper than his heart. Bank records showed bulk transfers. Money transferred from joint accounts into accounts she had never seen previously. She followed them slowly and laboriously, until the picture became appallingly clear. Vacations, presents, even a house bought in trust, linked to the woman who had taken her life. That was when Robyn lost it. Her pain turned to anger. She wasn't just a betrayed wife any longer. She was a woman ready to take on the world. She hired a lawyer. She collected every receipt, every text, every shred of evidence she could find. And when the lawsuit was filed, the headlines went wild. Kody Brown accused of financial fraud. Mystery fifth wife revealed. The news wasn't family scandal anymore. It was front-page national news. When the fifth wife appeared in court for the very first time, gasps echoed throughout the room. Robyn's breath caught, her eyes fixed on the woman who had invaded her nightmare. She was younger indeed, but it was not that which pained her the most. It was the poise in her step, the way she moved, as if she had nothing to be ashamed of. She did not look ashamed. She didn't even seem scared. She seemed like someone who thought she was where she belonged. Someone who thought she had already won. Whispers rushed through the courtroom. Reporters were writing furiously. Some of the children couldn't help looking away, their faces ashen, their fists clenching in their laps. Mary huddled closer to Janelle, whispering, "So it's true." Janelle's only response was a wordless nod. Her jaw clenched. Robyn sat rigid, her heart thudding so hard, she was certain the entire room could hear it. Her hands trembled as she stretched out for the pile of papers on the desk in front of her. The sacrificial evidence of all that he had done. She was certain that when it was her time, when she testified, that she would have to live through every moment of betrayal, every night spent lying awake, every doubt. And Kody, her Kody, sat mere feet from her, looking at her with eyes which no longer shone with love, but with cold calculation. The Browns had been criticized for years of being a family of illusions, of living behind an act that made their lives seem different but complete. And now the facade was stripped away.
Fifth wife's arrival made whispers scream. Private agony, public spectacle. The scandal had burst into flames, and it was too late to stop now. The courtroom was filled with an expectation. The sort that presses down upon you, weighing every breath heavily. Robyn Brown's name was called, and the scrape of her chair against the floor was louder than thunder. She rose slowly, her trembling legs beneath her flowing skirt, her white-knuckled hands holding fast to the papers she had been clutched since day one of the trial. The room fell silent as she made her way to the witness stand, each step echoing like a drumbeat, every eye fixed on her. She sat, but her body did not relax. Her fingers curled nervously in her lap as the clerk swore her in. When she extended her right hand, it quivered uncontrollably. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "I do." The words barely made it across the room, but everyone heard them. Everyone understood what they signified. She was about to open up every wound, destroy every wall, and bear the man she once loved more than anyone. She simply sat there for what seemed a long time, looking down at the papers. Her breathing was in short, ragged gasps. The judge hunched forward, his voice gentler than it had been. "Mrs. Brown, you may proceed." Her gaze darted up, first to the judge, then to Kody. That was her error. Because the moment her eyes connected with his, the tears she had been repressing erupted forth. Her body shook with great convulsions. Her voice choked and shattered. "You promised me," she gargled, her words tumbling out between her tears. "You promised me I was the last." The silence in the room shattered as whispers rose from the audience. Mary's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and recognition. Janelle leaned back in her chair, blinking rapidly, fighting to keep her own composure. Christine, in the back row, pressed her lips together, shaking her head slowly, almost as if she had expected this moment all along. The judge brought the gavel down once. Order in the court. But even he didn't reprimand Robyn. Her agony was too real, too human to be silenced. She snuffled, wiping her face with the back of her hand, although her tears continued to fall. I sacrificed everything for him. I stood up for him when no one else would. When the other wives referred to me as his favorite, when they resented me for replacing them, I still stood by him. I trusted him. She held up the papers in her hands, her fingers shaking so violently they clattered. And this is what I discovered. This is what he was hiding. Her lawyer moved forward, carefully leading her through the questions, but Robyn hardly required encouragement. Her tale spilled out like a river breaching a dam. She told of the late night waiting for him, of the explanations he made that no longer held validity, of the telephone conversations she intercepted that ran cold blood through her veins. She spoke to the court of the grainy photograph a child had shared with her, of the hotel bills she found, of the words that pierced her to the soul. I thought it was just an affair, she whispered, her voice shaking so much that the microphone just managed to pick it up. But it wasn't just that. It was money. Our money. Money intended for our children, for our home, for this family. The judge waved for the evidence. And Robyn, hands trembling like a leaf blowing in the wind, handed over the pile of bank statements. The bailiff took them to the bench, but the crowd was already able to see the stark numbers printed on the pages. Thousands and thousands of dollars, deposits to accounts with the woman who was sitting next to Kody. Gasps broke out across the room. Someone at the back of the room whispered, "Oh my God." One of the Brown kids put their face into their hands. The wives behind Robyn stared at each other in horror. Even the reporters wrote furiously, their pens scratching against the paper like a tempest of daggers. Kody slapped his hand on the table, his voice echoing, "This is lies. All of it. She's twisting everything. You all know it." "Mr. Brown, calm down," the judge shouted, his gavel coming down once more. "You will get your say." Robyn faced him, her tears flowing unimpeded now, her expression twisted in agony. "Stop lying, Kody. Stop, you destroyed everything." Her voice cracked as she screamed, the anguish ringing through the walls. "You destroyed this family." The words landed like a bomb. The courtroom trembled under their weight. Robyn crumpled forward, hiding her face in her hands, her shoulders convulsing as sobs shook her frame. Her attorney attempted to hold her up, but she was beyond consolation, reeling on the rawness of her pain. For an endless painful moment, no one breathed. Even the fifth wife remained motionless, her face stern but her gaze darting with something that could have been guilt, or possibly only irritation at the theatrics taking place next to her. At last the judge spoke, his tone softer now. "Mrs. Brown, take a deep breath. We know this is hard, but this court needs clarity. Please go on when you can." Robyn raised her head, mascara smudged, her face smeared with red, but her eyes seethed with something fresh. Anger, yes, but fury too. "Do you have any idea what it is to give everything up for someone, to offer them your faith, your loyalty, your children's futures, and learn they'd been living a whole other life in secret?" He said I was his last wife. He said that this family was his top priority. And then he gave her all of it. The house, the money, the commitments. She came back to Kody again, voice escalating. "What did you give us, Kody? What did you give our children?" The room was once more silent, her question suspended like a knife in air. Kody didn't respond. His face flushed, his hands clawing at the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles turned white, but no response emerged. For the first time in decades, Kody Brown had nothing to say. Mary brushed at her own face, muttering to Janelle, "That could have been any of us." Janelle nodded curtly, her lips clamped tight. Christine hunched forward in the seat behind them, her arms still crossed, but her eyes growing soft as she watched the woman she used to hate finally shatter. The judge thumbed through the papers, his brow deepening with each page. When he finally raised his eyes, they were somber. "The evidence is clear. These are serious amounts of money, Mr. Brown, and the accounts are demonstrably tied to Miss. He hesitated, his eyes flicking towards the fifth wife. To your companion. The fifth wife raised her chin in defiance. But Robyn's voice broke across the room one more time. You said I was different, she breathed, her voice raw and tired. You said I was the one you would never leave. Her eyes overflowed with new tears. But in the end I was just like the rest. Her words shattered something in the room. The audience was no longer whispering. They sat in stunned silence, observing Robyn clutch her chest, crying into her hands, the echoes of her heartache filling the chamber. The judge cleared his throat. This testimony is enough for now. Mrs. Brown, you may leave. But Robyn remained motionless. She sat rigid, her tears wetting the papers in her lap, her body quivering as if she were piecing herself together with threads. It took her lawyer and the bailiff to carefully push her back into her chair, where she slumped, her head down, her shoulders still shaking. And in that instant, it was no longer a court case. It was the public crumbling of a woman's world, the unveiling of secrets too terrible to keep, and the undeniable reality that the man seated across from her had ruined not merely a marriage, but a family. She stared up like a sword being drawn, silently, neatly, with no apology. The whispers faded as she walked towards the witness stand, the heels of her shoes clicking a precise metronome on the floor of the court. The fifth wife did not glance in Robyn's direction as she walked by, did not look toward Mary or Janelle, or the children whose eyes seared into her. She stared at the judge, chin high, shoulders set, as if she had rehearsed for this moment her whole life. As the clerk requested she raise her right hand, her fingers did not shake. I do, she replied, neither loud, nor soft accordant, a voice designed for microphones and headlines. She sat, folded her hands, waited. The courtroom grew cold. State your name for the record, said the attorney. She delivered it, every syllable silky. The reporter's pen scratched. A man coughed and apologized, and the judge leaned back as if to sample this new tide in the courtroom. You may proceed, he said. Let's get clear from the beginning, she said before the attorney's question could strike, voice firm enough to shatter stone. I did not steal a husband. I did not smash a family. I did not deceive anyone. The slightest flicker of a smile, more iron than fire. He came to me. Gasps low and mean swept across the benches. Robyn winced as though struck. Kody tensed, then retreated into that practiced stillness he wore as armor. The fifth wife's gaze didn't land upon either of them. Describe to the court how you met Mr. Brown, the attorney asked. A store, she replied. Not dramatic, not romantic. He knew me from somewhere, church connections, media, the usual. He was polite. He spoke of faith, family, exhaustion. She swiveled her head far enough to glance toward the jury box. Although there was no jury, only the judge, the gallery, and a nation of onlookers armed with phones. He said he was through pretending things were functioning. He said he was lonely in rooms full of people he'd sworn to love. Robyn's knuckles turned white around a crumpled tissue. Mary glanced away. Janelle did not. And you trusted him? The lawyer asked. I trusted the way he said it. A hesitation, precise and slow. I trusted the hours that came after that. The weeks afterward, the months in which he continued to appear. Not as a man who was hidden, but as a man who was relieved to be discovered. What did he say regarding his other relationships? Whether the separations were genuine, not mere spiritual semantics. Whether the public did not comprehend nuance. Whether papers were complicated. Whether hearts were done. Kody's jaw clenched. He looked at the table. The judge regarded him, weighing. And the finances? The attorney asked. Did Mr. Brown inform you what the money that he spent on you was from? He said it was his. She spoke the words flatly, like she was reading a tag. He said he'd reserved personal accounts for years. He said the family faulted him for being careful, but now it meant he could start anew. She raised her hands off the rail a fraction, palms open. I didn't require him to show it to me. I didn't require his spreadsheets. I required honesty. You got gifts, the lawyer said. Trips, jewelry, a house for us both, she clarified softly. A cracking rustle of amazement traveled through the room. He wanted stability. He told me stability is how you say sorry for taking too long to decide on someone.
Robyn made a tiny fractured sound. She tried to swallow. It resounded anyway. The lawyer reached across the table and pushed a folder in her direction. Exhibit L. The sales agreement on the house at Elkhorn Ridge. That your signature there. She didn't flinch. Yes, it is. And this wire transfer 2 draws. 48,000 and 120,000 out of an account ending in 1486. Did you know that account had a family trust tied to it? No, the response came with the force of a chair pushed away from a table. I knew 2 things. He told me it was his money. He told me he wanted me safe. Safe from what? She rolled her head then. Only a fraction, but enough that for the first time she gazed directly at Robyn. It wasn't defying or it wasn't compassion, but rather acknowledgement, like that he was noticing gravity existed. From being erased, she said. From being the rumor he was too afraid to identify. A reporter's pen ripped the page. Did you urge Mr. Brown to conceal money? The attorney asked. No. Did you know he withdrew funds from accounts to which other parties were entitled? No. Did you care? The corner of her mouth curled up annoyance or humor. Impossible to discern. I cared whether he spoke the words he spoke to my hands in the dark. I cared whether we were real or not, or simply his practice for another life. Objection. Kody's lawyer intervened. Speculation, sustained, the judge ordered, his eyes not leaving the witness. Counsel, limit the questions to questions of knowledge and action. Of course, the lawyer answered. Ma'am, did you ever log into any accounts in Mr. Brown's name without his permission? No. Did you sign his name to any document? No. Did you tell him to keep your relationship a secret? I told him to tell the truth to those who trusted him. She bridged the heartbeat gap with her words. Nothing else. Which, as you can see, is a more difficult thing than the purchase of airline tickets. Something fragile snapped in Kody's immobility. He leaned toward the mic. You don't know what it costs to tell the truth. She didn't glance up. I know what it pays in lies. Brown, the judge cautioned, and Kody's hand withdrew from the microphone as a child scorched by a stove. The attorney for the 5th wife shifted direction. Let's talk about the timeline. You and Mr. Brown started dating on the day he realized he wasn't a prop in his own life, she replied. Use any date you want. Is that your testimony? It is. Then on the 14th of November, by these messages he informed you that he was done with the house wars and bankrolling grudges. What did you think he meant by that? That he was worn out from fights over property. That he was sick of being accused of being a tyrant and a wallet. He said he'd made concessions, compromises, that he'd been cast as a villain because he refused to continue paying for a narrative that he was no longer a part of. She shrugged. Not nonchalant, but almost pitying. It is very difficult to exit a story when cameras want you to remain. Christine's eyes narrowed from the back of the room, not at the witness but at the truth in the line. And the house? The lawyer said, drumming on Exhibit L. Why accept something so big? Because he said a rented life made him feel disposable. She let the words hang between the benches and the rail. He said owning something together would make him honest. Did you ask him to divorce someone for you? No. Did you propose to him? No. You come across as passive, but the paper trail indicates coordination, countered the attorney, voice taking on an edge. Phone calls to the realtor, emails dickering over final price. A walkthrough video where you're reciting room dimensions. That looks like someone highly engaged. Involved isn't manipulative, she said. If you have to put them in opposition, be careful with your verbs. Mary moved as if there was an unseen draft that slipped beneath her chair. Janelle's eyes remained fixed on the stand. She resembled a woman taking the measure of the blade, not the hand that wielded it. The lawyer stepped to the center of it. Did you ever hear Mr. Brown tell you that he used family money to help you? No, you never suspected. I guess the past has long arms, she said. And for an instant the steel relaxed. It was a woman talking to herself. I guessed he had not drawn the boundaries cleanly enough to make the future simple. Yet you remained, said the attorney. Yet I remained. Because you loved him? Because going away would not have made the truth any less true. A shallow wow exhaled from somewhere in the rear. The judge raised a hand, and silence reigned once more. Cross, said Robyn's lawyer, standing up so much more gentle than anyone anticipated. She moved towards the witness stand, with the slow steps of a person who enters a room where a baby is sleeping and a dog growls. Ma'am, she started, and the term lacked sarcasm. Did you understand when you signed the documents closing on that house, that the trust that you were sending money from was also paying holidays, groceries, tuition, medical expenses? No, the fifth wife replied. And if you had known, she gazed beyond the attorney to the bench, to the crowd, to the spot where all conclusions reside. If I had known, I would have requested different money. Underscore different money. The attorney echoed as if savoring the words. Is there such a thing? Or is money always the same? Numbers in motion with consequences trailing behind them. It makes a difference whose vows are hanging on it, said the fifth wife. Money isn't free. Money bears vows. Robyn's lawyer did not smile, but a sort of respect flickered over her face. She raised another document. Exhibit S. A letter from you to the realtor. We're looking for a quick close. His family is unstable. I want this secure. Your words. Yes, volatile is a pointed term for individuals you say you didn't mean to hurt. Harm and volatility are not the same, the fifth wife responded. Volatility is a space where glass can shatter, even if no one comes near it. And you didn't come near it. I was in it, she answered. Being there is sometimes enough. The gallery gasped at soft group noise individuals utter when they hear a line they had hoped to have written themselves first. The gavel of the judge came down once, not to quiet, but to remind the assembly that words were not judgment. Law would be
Last area, Robyn's lawyer stated. The messages. She pushed a printed thread onto the projector. The screen pulsed, late-night timestamps. Sweet nothings interspersed with the occasional sentence as heavy as stone. I can't breathe there. I want to create something that doesn't require me to pick a favorite child. They will hate you. They already hate me for things I didn't do. The fifth wife sat through the words unflinching. These are yours and Mr. Brown's. Yes, they are. In them he offers you a life without secrets. Did you ever insist he keep you out of sight? No? Did you conceal yourself? I dodged cruelty where I could, she said. But cruelty seeks you out when you go out with in public a man whose existence is argument. And what do you term this? What we're in now. Accounting, she said. For everyone. Silence again, not vacant. Reflective. The judge interlaced his fingers. I have questions. Her face to him patient. You have testified you did not know the source of the funds beyond Mr. Brown's assurances. Yes, Your Honor. You have testified you signed documents, negotiated details, joined in the acquisition of property that on the evidence was funded at least in part by assets disputed in this case. I have. Do you see how your confidence, your willingness to accept his word, could look in this setting less like innocence and more like convenient blindness? She thought. Not the show of consideration. The actual one. I understand how it might appear that way. I see too that if someone who has spent his life convincing people to believe in him convinces you to believe in him, that something is ordinary until the check comes due. I can't alter that. I trusted him. I can only speak for what I did when trust encountered paperwork. And what did you do? I signed where I thought I was supposed to sign. I constructed a closet and purchased a table. I instructed him not to utter that he loved me if he intended to continue despising himself. I instructed him to be honest with the women who constructed him. And when he did not, I discovered how heavy silence is. Robyn's face creased, no longer with anger now, but with a sorrow now complicated. Seeing a competitor explain the same fire from another door. The judge gazed down at the pile of bank statements, then back up. Do you regret taking the house? I regret trusting that a house is cleaner than a heart, she replied. And Mr. Brown? She exhaled. I regret letting him make me the reason he didn't choose courage sooner. A sound rippled through the children's row. Hurt, recognition, something between. Kody's eyes snapped to them, then back to the bench. For a heartbeat his mouth opened, as if a version of the truth had clawed its way up his throat. He swallowed it. No other questions, Robyn's lawyer said, voice softer now, as if the ground had shifted beneath them both. Kody's lawyer rose for redirect, swift and clipped. You still love my client, don't you? The fifth wife turned at last fully to Kody. The room held its breath the way a body braces before a crash. I love the man who told me the truth, she said. I don't know where he is. That's not responsive, snapped the attorney. It's the only response that isn't a lie, she said. Did you ask him to give you more? He probed. No. Would you give the house back?
If that's what makes the numbers honest, she said. But houses don't fix promises. Nothing further, he said, too quickly. The judge nodded once. You may step down. She stood as she'd sat, deliberate master of every inch of ground her body took up. She walked by Kody without touching him. She didn't even pause. For a single flash of a moment, he extended as if extending a hand might be the same as saying sorry. But his fingers came down around nothing. She didn't glance at Robyn either. There are battles you fight by not taking up the weapons offered to you. When she sat down, the room let out a breath it didn't know it had been holding. A journalist fumbled and lost a pen, and forgot to retrieve it. The kids gazed at the floor as if answers could be tile grout. Mary rubbed her nose bridge. Janelle gazed ahead, seeing 5 years ago, and 5 years hence simultaneously. The judge ordered a recess. The tap of the gavel was close to gentle this time, as if he too saw that what had just transpired wasn't cruelty or vindication, but a cold, clear weather report. These are the winds. This is the temperature. Here is how you dress if you want to make it home alive. As citizens stood, the noise grew. Fabric, footsteps, the murmured mathematics of sides and sin. Robyn sat still, her gaze on the vacant stand as if the specter of a confession lingered there. Kody sat rigid, the tension around his mouth aging him beyond what the cameras ever permitted. The fifth wife ironed a crease from her dress, then clasped her hands, waiting. She had fought back without breaking. She had yielded nothing to the crowd, nothing to the legend. She had presented the court with the only currency the day would accept, an honest edged account of what she did know, and what she refused to know, and the boundary between them that would take all of them home. Outside, the sky wore that hard, high shine that makes everything seem more truthful than people can tolerate. Inside, the tale reversed, quietly and firmly, and the room knew why certain storms were acts of God and others were merely weather. The distinction, of course, is paperwork. The distinction is who signs, and who pays, and who can walk into a house and acknowledge that it was never going to be large enough to contain this much truth. The judge's chambers had been strained throughout the day, but when he came back to the bench after recess, the silence was oppressive. No one moved. No one ventured a whisper. As he settled his robes and put a tidy pile of papers before him, his face was chiseled from rock, impassive, but his eyes held the sort of weight that said to everyone in the room, this decision will not be minor. He cleared his throat. The microphone hissed. This court has received comprehensive testimony, read significant evidence, and witnessed the behavior of all parties concerned. His tone was even but firm. The issue before us is not merely legal. It is personal, emotional, and quite frankly heartbreaking. But this court must trade in facts, and the facts are disturbingly troubling. The crowd leaned forward as if drawn by an unseen string. Pencil-wielding reporters poised over their notebooks. Sketch artists' cameras sharpened their pencils, ready to record every wrinkle in his forehead. The judge's attention settled on Kody. Mr. Brown, evidence shows a pattern of money movement, well in excess of $200,000, transferred from family funds without openness. These funds were utilized, in part for the purchase of real estate, extravagant gifts, and expenditures that augmented a relationship not divulged to, nor sanctioned by, the other parties dependent on said funds. Kody's lips opened, but nothing came out. His jaw was clenched, the veins on his temples swollen. The judge went on, his voice tougher now. You say these were your own personal funds, but the records indicate otherwise. These were joint property, property in trust, property destined for family use. This is not an issue of religious freedom, nor one of lifestyle. It is an issue of financial wrongdoing, and wrongdoing carries penalties.